Welcome, everyone. So excited to have you all joining us for our Lunch and Learn. This Lunch and Learn is about Ubuntu principles and social work practice. And so excited to have Holly Johnson, who has been a practicum student with the NSCSW this year as part of completing her Bachelor of Social Work from Dalhousie. This Lunch and Learn counts as formal professional development. It can also count towards your diversity requirements. And with that, so excited to have us begin. First, we want to acknowledge the land where we are. I want to invite you to join me in the chat and acknowledge the land where you are located. You can go to placenames.mapdev.ca, which is a wonderful interactive tool. I would like to begin by acknowledging that I am speaking from Unama'ki, which is located on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq, whose inherent rights were recognized in the peace and friendship treaties that were signed with the Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, and Passamaquoddy peoples from 1725 to 1779. This series of treaties did not surrender Indigenous land, resources, or sovereignty to the British Empire, but instead established rules for an ongoing relationship between nations. The treaties were later reaffirmed by Canada in Section 35 of the Constitution Act in 1982, and they remain active to this day. Let us take this time to pause in reflection and gratitude for the land where we live and work. The Nova Scotia College of Social Workers commits to translating this acknowledgement into action by seeking to implement the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action, especially those regarding education. We commit to doing what we can to becoming better treaty partners. We commit to learning and to unlearning. Let us take this moment for a breath, taking a deep breath in and out, centering ourselves in the land acknowledgement that we just said, perhaps taking a moment to look outside the window, close your eyes, connect back to the last time you were outside. And let us pause in gratitude for all who have and continue to heroically care and advocate for this beautiful land. May we join them in this sacred work. Let us ground ourselves in the wisdom of the land-based Mi'kmaq teachings and values that we must all begin to learn. Let us work to decolonize ourselves, our practice, and this community that we share by working for justice for all living beings as an expression of our gratitude for being here. Let us take a deep breath and recenter ourselves away from the violent ways colonization fills our world and fills us. Let us take a deep breath and work on letting go of the unconscious bias that is everywhere, inside and out. May our session today lead us to be in right relationship with this land and with one another. Olaluyu. When we acknowledge the land, we must also begin to acknowledge the wisdom of this planet and align ourselves with its truths. Today is one important way that we hope to begin to do that. And so it is my pleasure to invite Holly, who I am going to have help lead us in this very important conversation. Our dream and our vision for this conversation is that we are going to begin together, and Holly is going to actually, as she speaks, there's going to be different questions. Now, I noticed that not everyone has written in the chat yet, so please, please, please use the chat to communicate. First, located the land and join us in the land acknowledgement. And then we are going to have different questions. And as we ask these questions, we want to invite everyone to begin to think about, what does this mean to be having this conversation about applying Ubuntu principles of social work in your practice? So as you begin to think about these questions, we're then going to have some small group discussion, and then we're going to come back together and discuss together. So without further ado, Holly, over to you.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Holly, and we're going to talk about Ubuntu principles in social work. Next slide, please. So what is Ubuntu? In its most straightforward meaning, Ubuntu is an African concept from the Bantu languages in South Africa, which loosely means humanness, as defined by Alicia Blackwood. How do you think a humanizing framework could assist in the practice of social work? I'm going to give you a couple of minutes, I think, to answer that.
So again, please put in the chat, begin the conversation together. That's the first step towards humanness, is being in dialogue with one another. So please take a few moments to begin reflecting on some of the questions. These will form the basis of our small group discussion afterwards.
Next slide, please. Ubuntu, the humanness of all individuals. What does this phrase, the humanness of all individuals, mean to you? Knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are can help you be intentional and authentic. If you work on your weaknesses, they will become your strength. This way, your personal issues, values, beliefs, and experience and feelings don't cloud your service delivery. It helps you be more present in the moment, seeing the person in front of you. Next slide, please. And to that end, what are some of your weaknesses, your strength? I know day to day, we don't typically think of these, but I'm encouraging you to think of them, because there's a lot of learning and a lot of understanding that would come from understanding what your strengths and weaknesses are. I'm inviting you to write them down and say them out loud to yourself. Place them in order of what you would like to do and what you would like to, what you would like to work at. This is a form of reflective practice, professional development. It relates to understanding and affirming the humanity of others. This is also based on the code of ethics, service to humanity. Next slide, please. And you can't support us or work with us if you don't know us. That's a quote from Alicia Blackwood. Think of, who is the us? Who are we working with? What happens when we think of this quote? And there is no right or wrong answer. Put how you feel based on your understanding. Next slide, please. Understanding a person through their lived experience, their environment, and their upbringing can allow us as social workers to create genuine relationships with service users. The service users know their own lives and needs best. They tell me as a social worker what they need. And because I understand the structures and the systems, it could be a form of social justice if I can help them navigate those in order to meet their needs. Teller service and support through creating intentional relationships. The intentionality is a big thing in terms of Ubuntu and amplifying all voices and all experience. Next slide, please. To that end, how did you define and understand trauma? I guess, some cultures may not have a word for trauma, but based on your understanding as social workers, healthcare professionals, how do you understand trauma? Next slide. Blackwood writes that the collective traumas that our children have experienced for generations must be countered with a pedagogy that puts their humanity first. The service user you are working with may have had past traumas. Understanding, respecting, and affirming that puts their humanity first as well. The person that you see in front of you carries with them the culmination of their trauma and or the trauma of their life and family. You see them in a moment in time, but they are part of a larger story. When we forget that they are part of a broader context, we miss out on a lot. To build respectful and enduring relationships, we must connect to that larger story. Thinking of this, how can this mindset help with burnout? Give you a minute to reflect on that, or I'll continue reading and you can just put your responses in the chat. Next slide, please. I love this. This slide really says everything for me. What's love got to do with it? Love is a trauma-informed strategy that calms the brain. Neuroscientist Ken Ginsburg explained that when young people have been exposed to adverse childhood experience, they are often in a fight or flight mode. But when they are consistently being exposed to love and a caring environment, it confuses the amygdala. So the children are the adults that now come for support and services. So understanding that and being intentional about the way you deliver services and supports creates a much more mutual accountability and respect for the lived experiences of those individuals. Blackwood states that working with marginalized and disenfranchised communities for many years, I have seen how teaching love and exposing the children to authentic love and care have helped change their mindset and help them to build resilience. Next slide, please. The humanness of all individuals. How do you stay human as you do social work? How does this prevent burnout? What is the connection between trauma and love? What does that do to your social work practice? And how does that connect to diversity? These are all questions to think about and reflect upon.
So we'll take maybe 2 minutes for everyone to be writing in the chat some initial thoughts to these phenomenal questions that Holly put on. So please put in the chat so that we can begin talking amongst ourselves and thinking about these really important questions that are part of the application of Ubuntu principles. So certainly this first principle, the humanness of all individuals.
Is it 2 months, 2 minutes up? Sorry, I'm not keeping time. Thank you. So how do you define diversity? Blackwood defines it as the ability to recognize and respect people's differences. And another element is cultural competence, is one's ability to understand your own culture and show empathy for others. When we are culturally competent, it helps us understand the uniqueness of other people's cultures and show them respect without judgment. Diversity is about cultural attentiveness to our unique and yet shared humanity. Next slide, please. Cultural identity Blackwood asks, is having a deep understanding of how our values, customs, and traditions shape who we are as a person, a strong sense of our own culture that helps to build our own cultural competence? What is your cultural identity? Do you know where your values, customs, and traditions come from? How do they shape your interactions with service users? I think these questions are key to ask ourselves consistently, because our values and our beliefs may change through time and space and through interactions. So I think that those questions are key. And I believe that is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and understand that you don't have to be perfect to be great. Just be your authentic self. Thank you. My name is Holly.
Thank you so much, Holly. This was such a wonderful start of this conversation, and there's some phenomenal comments in here. We are going to read through some of your comments since we didn't get a chance to read them, but we want to give you a chance, since you have been reading them, to have a conversation with one another and to begin to allow some of these great ideas to cross-fertilize. So we're going to stop recording. So for those of you who are joining us on YouTube, this is counts as a partial conversation. So we're going to pause. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you had a great conversation. We're going to have a chance to hear some of the feedback of some of the small groups. So I'm going to hand this over to Holly.
Hello, everybody. I hope you had a chance, like Nash said, to have great conversation and some reflexivity. So in terms of, just want to ask, in terms of knowing what our strengths and our weaknesses are, how could understanding that create a much more conducive atmosphere for humanizing the way you deliver services and supports to your service users, patients, clients, however they would like to be identified? So does anybody want to put in the chat or say what kind of feedback or reflections that they? Yeah, so Nash very quick with the typing, so she just put the question in there. So I'm not sure if somebody wants to.
All right, so I see. So the question is, as you'll see in the chat, how does knowing your strengths and weakness help support a humanizing framework for social work? Janelle says being aware of our own knowledge and gaps can help build openness and trust with clients. And then Cindy has raised their hand, so I will invite. Yeah, there you go. Go for it.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So I'm currently sitting in BC and in the process of trying to get transferred out to move out to Nova Scotia. You have a beautiful province there, so I'm kind of excited about getting there. But in the meantime, I wanted to jump in and be part of this, the Nova Scotia College of Social Workers. So I've already transferred. But one of the things in our little group that we had, and I think that this really speaks to the humanist quality, and I want to give kudos to Michelle, who actually said it, is the part about being real, like showing up, being real, and just how far that gets you in, dealing with a situation that you're dealing with. If you're real and you're present and you're showing up with love in your heart, I think that right there, that's being a human, never mind your backgrounds. And I think that, it acknowledges that your strengths are being real, but also knowing that if you're being triggered, that you take care of that afterwards for yourself, like just to park it and then take care of it when you have an opportunity to maybe have some reflective conversations with somebody else.
Thank you so much. And then I see also Pamela says self-reflection on our own strengths and weaknesses, being aware that each person is unique, being authentic with those we interact with. And Ian saying self-awareness is key to working in our field, which is absolutely true. Over to you, Holly.
So yes, I agree with all of those. I think that I think of when I work with service users, I think of everything in context and with a cultural spin, understanding that there's differences and nuances in meaning between languages. So I think about those themes consistently, and I know that language changes and meaning may change as well, and it does. So I think it's key for us to understand our stuff so that we don't go and try and support somebody and not realize that our stuff has maybe inhibited a conversation that we should have, because we are not acknowledging that our strengths, our weaknesses, and our values, biases, and beliefs have interfered with that. So I really encourage myself to always understand where my stuff comes from and why I'm triggered, and notice what my body does so that I can be present and intentional and authentic and create open and honest communication. And to that end, I understand that everything's connected because I am a Black and Indigenous person with multiple intersectionalities. So I understand everything as interconnected. And I always try and operate from a place of kindness. Do I always get it right? I don't think I do. But that is a failing, or not a failing of mine, but I'm a human, right? So I'm learning and consistently unlearning. But I'm also pushing back against structures in order to create those decolonizing things that we need to do for me to be authentic. So that's all I really wanted to say on that point. If anybody else wants to.
Thank you so much. And actually, so there's comments that are coming in, some individuals, some to everyone. Holly's saying, when we know more about our strengths and weaknesses and even our own traumas and where they come from, it can change our perspective when working with our clients. And that helps assist with self-reflection. And the other comment is about just the notion of failure is a colonial concept, right? So the notion of failure is what causes shame and blame and guilt and hiding, and part of a humanizing framework is recognizing our humanity, recognizing that we're not perfect and that it's not just the connectivity, but it's that humanness. Holly has been talking a lot about self-awareness as well, which of course would be a great thing to continue to discuss. It happens to be something the Professional Development Committee is working on, is to develop a tool for people to become more self-aware of their own positionality, their own intersectionality, and their own bias and experiences, and how that does or doesn't impact the work that they're doing. So any other comments or questions that we can make? Or Holly, do you have any?
I guess what I forgot to mention is Ubuntu says, I am because you are. And that speaks to the interconnectedness of all of us. So if there was not people, I could not exist in the sense that there was other people. I am because you are. I exist because others have existed, and understanding that we're all connected, right? We're all humans to the core. We're all connected. So in spite of what the colonial structures and systems might put on us, at the core of everything, we are human. And when we connect as human, that creates an atmosphere of kindness and loving and respect, and understanding somebody based on their own frame. That is the beginning of genuineness. That will decrease burnout, because then when you create these relationships, I would suspect that you won't have the service user continuously coming to seek services, because if they feel heard, validated, and affirmed, hey, you never know what kind of domino effect that could create. And indeed, I believe it would be a positive, affirming kind of thing that circumvents all of the colonial things that have been embedded in us and not investigated and not critically looked at, because it's very easy when you don't critically look at something to normalize and validate it. Even when you think you know better, it's just easy because that's what everybody else or a lot of people around you are doing, and we just take it for well, that's the way it's always been done. So these are the singular narratives that I continuously push back against or try and acknowledge. And remember, I don't always get it right either. I am human, and so are you. Thank you.
Thank you. And so we've got a couple of comments. It would be wonderful if Ubuntu could be shared more widely within the public healthcare system. We are all human and need to remember that, with good days and bad days, being aware of ourselves and our strength and weakness, reminding ourselves of this regularly allows us to continue to be kind to ourselves and others. The Ubuntu principle can also build client agency and support their ability to make their own decisions and make positive changes. Absolutely. And we had a couple of other comments earlier. Leading with kindness to other social workers is the first step to reducing blame and shame. So how does the way we treat other social workers and other providers impact this whole dynamic? How do we care for each other? How do we create that balance so that we're kind of all working together? And then how does that translate to our attitudes towards racists, capitalist, colonial systems, and how do we reflect that in our advocacy? I am because you are, I advocate because you are, we advocate together is what our social justice committee is trying to do, to advocate with First Voice organization. So it's not social workers advocating for, but it's advocating with, as a reflection of Ubuntu principles. Madeline saying, this principle helps build interconnection. Some wonderful gratitude coming your way too, Holly. I hope you're drinking that up. Any final reflections on how you are going to do something differently today as a result of what you heard with Holly or your conversations with one another? The breakout rooms helped stay engaged, even if you didn't get to do that. So that's great. This is a different approach to our lunch and learn. So that feedback is really helpful. Thank you. Any other reflections or comments? What are you going to do today for the rest of your day to apply Ubuntu principles in your afternoon? If everyone can share one thing you're going to do differently to remember your humanness and your interconnectedness. Meditate. Awesome. What else? We will have more breakout rooms. I'm getting a lot of, so sorry, YouTube watchers, you're going to have to come and join in on some of these conversations. We're trying to do the hybrid conversation thing. Take a break away from your desk, meditate. Going into a challenging meeting, I'm going to be kind, right? Assuming positive intent. When people do and say things, always assume if your feelings are hurt that it probably has something to do with their own stuff. We personalize way too much. Lots of time thinking about this lunch and learn. That's awesome. Go for a walk. Try to engage with someone you don't know. Awesome. Reflect on I am because you are and gratitude. Well, that could be a perfect note to end on. Holly, it's been not only a pleasure learning from you today, but having you be with our college as you are wrapping up your practicum. And to you all, if you know social workers that are students that want to do practicums, we love having students get engaged in our work because this is how we help together transform the future of social work. Yeah, so learning more about Ubuntu principles, any literature is the question. So I will share, I'll let Holly speak a little more, but I'm going to share the slide on the last slide that's the reference. It is Alicia Blackwood, Ubuntu Pedagogy, Becoming an Ubuntu Responsive Educator is the video that Holly was using to guide our conversation today. So there it is. That's as much as it's an educator, what Holly was thinking, and Holly can probably say a lot more about it. is that as social workers, we're doing a lot of educating, sometimes our clients, but often the systems within which we work, because that's a form of advocacy too, when we educate other colleagues and disciplines to see the world from a systems Ubuntu trauma-informed perspective. That's a form of advocacy too.
And I just want to say a final point, like,
Please.
I did, because of that, I was able to go to the Dalhousie Social Work Community Learning Clinic, and I'd like to give a big shout out to say that they are doing a form of Ubuntu, even when they didn't realize they were doing. So thank you to Megan, Paulette, Aaron, Daniela. I know I'm forgetting somebody, sorry, but big shout out to them for doing Ubuntu, and I would encourage them to learn more, and you'll be that much more wonderful than you are right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that's, I think, a gorgeous note to end on, this notion that maybe I was already doing Ubuntu, but I didn't know. That was some of the comments in the chat as well earlier around how does this connect with the concept of unconditional positive regard and the ways in which we want to be assuming positive intent in everything that we do. There are ways of even tying it back into CBT. There's a copy of the book. And with that, thank you all so very much. It's been a pleasure. Holly, thank you. And hope everyone has a wonderful, nourishing rest of your day.
Remember, I am because you are, therefore I am. Thank you.